especially when you sort of like shook it and you just get like, you bite into it as well, you get the old like dust ball in your mouth.
Porridge is the worst, isn't it? You know, if I put it in the porridge, it just comes out clumpy as fuck.
Do you know, I always get the ground one. Like I've not done it with like porridge of full oats. So it's like the sort of ground one where it kind of just feels like you've got sand in your protein shake.
Yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? I don't know how people do like the blended, you know, like put the oats in the blender and have that as a protein shake.
Just oats?
With protein.
Yeah,
as a protein shake, just to get a bit of carbs in it.
Yeah, I think a lot of them use the like the ground ones, don't they? Where it's kind of like goes quite fine powder. Yeah, but it's you get like it just doesn't mix with the water, so it kind of tastes like you're drinking sand. So you get all the like yeah.
Opening up episode 59 hot.
Here we go. Hi guys, welcome to episode 59 of the GRAPPLERS Academy. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, drop us a comment below, and yeah, let us know your thoughts. Bit of a quiet week, I think, news-wise.
Fairly quiet week after all the dark talk of last episode, which we're not going to gloss over again, but I did watch the Magna Rocha thing back.
Yeah.
Again when he was giving his explanation of his thoughts on the whole situation, and did a bit of extra research after the fact as well, and some interesting facts came up that I'm not going to go back into it again on this podcast, but there was some interesting stuff off the back of that. I think probably the biggest thing this week in sports entertainment is, unfortunately, again, Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley with another premium quality boxing.
Like, I've been having this debate whether it sort of looks worse for MMA because our champions are going into boxing to get beat by a YouTube star, or whether it looks worse for boxing because all of this nonsense is happening on boxing stage. Now, my take on it is a lot of the MMA guys who are coming into it are turning up for the paycheck and not really there for the win. Like, I think Tyron's a little bit butthurt that he didn't get the win. He had one good round out of an 8 round fight.
Yeah. So
I don't really see where he thinks that he did win that fight. He should have finished him in that 4th round, but I'm going to lose all kind of respect for him if he does get that tattoo to get the rematch.
Yeah, why would he? I mean, you know, Ben Askren basically retired, didn't really care about the victory, admittedly did it for the paycheck. No. You've got to think Tyron Woodley's probably doing the same, maybe with a little bit more vengeance and like, you know, I think I can beat this guy sort of thing.
Yeah.
But again, looking at, aside from the last MMA fight, I think that he had where he got knocked out by coming forward too aggressively, had a bit of a reputation for not being too forthcoming with striking. And it was a bit of a criticism. But again, you know, he hit Jake Paul hard, put him into the ropes, and then didn't really do anything.
No.
Again, you know, it'd be a shame for it to come out admittedly that these fights are fixed.
There's a lot of people alluding to it.
But
there's a lot of people alluding to it.
It's hard to look past, isn't it?
Yeah. Especially seeing how aggressive Tyron's been, but then also 3 out of his last 4 fights have been where Tyron's had no gas like pedal, where he's not really pushed the pace. In that last fight with Gilbert, it was Gilbert, wasn't it? The last one where he got knocked out. Great performance, really difference in attitude. Just think his time's passed in the cage.
Yeah, I think as great as a fighter as he has been over the years, and we've done breakdowns of his techniques from a grappling point of view, boxing is not MMA. There's a lot of different aspects to MMA that change the muscle memory and the style that you develop for striking.
Yeah, massively.
You know, if you just go purely into a striking sport, the way that, you know, Tyron's got good wrestling and good wrestling defense as well. I think he likes a lot of people to rush onto him and counter strike and counter wrestle.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really work as well in boxing, does it?
No.
Especially when you've got somebody who's kind of flailing shots at you, and I don't know, it's just tough to see. Like we've said before, it's difficult to believe that there's not enough boxing talent out there that this has to be the most entertaining thing that's happening in boxing. And I get the fact that the reason why it's entertaining is there's the story behind it, there's the build-up, there's the hype. But why can't you just do this with existing champions? Like we've said before, the thing that makes these build-up to the fights interesting is learning about the fighters, you know, having a bit of a background story to them. Great they do it on the UFC with Embedded, but you know, it's like a longer span sort of thing and not just a week before to get you invested in the fighter. And you know, whether you love them or you hate them, the Jake and Logan Paul are doing this and they're building up hype for the fights, making it interesting for. Because boxing fans don't really care about it. It's the non-boxing fans that are paying for these fights.
Basically, the Jake Paul and the Logan Paul fans, like the ones that have come from their YouTube channel, probably grew up watching them, and he admitted that he can throw as much money as he wants at these events without it affecting his actual bottom line. So I do think it's a good thing for combat sports that it's happening. I just wish there was more of a spotlight on the actual experienced fighters. Like the other fighters that have had the same level of experience don't get the same level of exposure or even the same level of paycheck. So it's an interesting sort of conversation. Like,
as much as you can't like him, I'm gonna have to say that I do agree with some of the points that he's made about the UFC paychecks and, you know, calling Dana White out for it. I had an interesting chat with somebody before, and I've not said it to you, but an interesting concept of the way that you could do the paying systems for the UFC, let's say, for example, is have the fighters on a salary. Let's say they're on a, you know, $250 base salary to be a UFC athlete, as though they're like a player for a Premier League team or whatever. I know the figures are completely wildly different, but if you're paying somebody $250,000 a year to be a UFC fighter, and then they're contracted to fight 3 or 4 times a year, and then they can get win bonuses then. They can get maybe percentages of pay-per-views based off who's selling fights. I'm sure they can get the statistics on who's tuning into what fighters. But just have them on a base salary at least or something. I'm sure some people wouldn't like that, but it's just an idea to look after the fighters. Because, you know, there was that female fighter the other week who basically won the pay bonus of an additional $50,000. And that was like a massive thing to her because she was in debt, and that money meant a lot, and it does to a lot of the fighters, because we talked about it before and everybody talks about it, paying your camps, paying your coaches, paying your nutritionist, flying out, sports therapist, recovery, everything, all that sort of stuff. If the UFC want to make themselves more like a legitimate, not a legitimate organisation because they already are, but more something like the NFL or the NBA, and they're looking at their fighters as part of their roster because they can't go anywhere else and do anything. You've got to look after them a bit more.
Oh, definitely. I think as well, like, taking away their ability to earn sponsorship money, like the amount of money the UFC must turn over from sponsors, ticket sales, pay-per-views, the amount they're spending on their fighters, probably not a huge percentage of what they're making per event.
It'd be interesting to see a statistic on that. Especially just like if you take out of account the fight of the night bonuses and stuff like that. Because even still at that, like, what's a fight of the night bonus, like 50k? 50k is 50k, but it's not a lot of money when you think about all the revenue that the UFC probably just gets off the YouTube highlight video for greatest knockout, like that spinning heel cut this weekend. Did you see that?
No, I've not seen that one yet.
Great spinning head kick.
Oh wow.
Knockout. That video is probably going to get millions of views. Whatever the ad revenue is for that on YouTube is probably more than the 50k that the fighter got for the fight of the night or the finish of the night.
And would the fighter get royalties for each of those YouTube plays?
No, well, that's another thing that pisses me off as well. Like, and this is the thing with the Olympics. The athletes can't even use their own footage of the competition on their Instagram pages. It's fucking bullshit. Straight up, like, you can't. You are the athlete who's creating the content, and this is the argument that Jake Paul has, which is why I agree with him. They've created the content. It's like all the disputes that the music industry had with the artists. Over the years, and I'm sure it still goes on now, like the record companies own the rights to that because it was done on their label or on their show. It's completely taken out of account the creativity and the fact that the artists produce the content.
No, I think it takes away the years of skill honing as well. Like, how can you expect someone to develop their skill set over these many years. Again, Olympics being the prime example of that. For then all these corporations to come in and be like, yeah, we own the footage. You can't get your own sponsors because this company sponsors the event. You're going to be on this channel, and you can't use your footage. You can't wear your own clothing. You're not going to make any money from the sponsors' sales. You may have a fan who goes out and buys a shirt because they saw you in that shirt and they kind of aspire to try and be like you. Yet you're not seeing anything off the back end of that.
Yeah, and it's funny as well for, like, I noticed when I was watching the weightlifting, some of the athletes who are sponsored by like SBD and stuff like that, which is a weightlifting apparel company. They sell like the knee sleeves and the belts. They had to put tape over the logos.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I noticed that quite a lot. And it's like, you know, that the athletes are sponsored by these companies year round, and then that's the biggest platform for them to get on stage, and like they're not even promoting it, they're just wearing their training gear.
Yeah.
You've got to stick a label over it and cover it up. And fair enough, all the people who know weightlifting know just by looking at the sleeves what they're wearing.
Yeah.
But just you know, for people who don't know, like, oh, I want to get into weightlifting, like what sleeves should I get? Maybe get those ones that the person who's just won the gold medals won. It's just another boosting platform for them, isn't it?
And the annoying thing is they'll probably get fined if that tape falls off or if they forget.
Yeah, imagine they got red lighted because the tape came off midway through the lift.
Yeah. It's an absolute joke. But I definitely agree with what Logan and Jake Paul are trying to do with the whole fighters' paychecks. Like, just any athlete who basically works hard, trains, and gets to a level, and then expected to perform for a less than livable salary on something that's going to make possibly hundreds of millions. Where's their cut of that?
Yeah, I wonder what the pay, like the staffing costs and organisational costs for every UFC event are compared to what they actually bring in through the gate.
Wouldn't surprise me if some of the entry level staff are on more than some of the entry level fighters.
As like an annual salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be really interesting to see that. Those are the sort of stats that you don't hear about, and you probably, I'm sure you probably look for it.
Oh yeah.
But admittedly, there is a big train and entourage of people that go into setting up a UFC event and keeping the company ticking all year round. But you know, I don't know. It seems like there's plenty of money there to go around to the fighters.
Look after the guys that are making them content for you. Like, if there was a fighters union and they went on strike, no content, no business. Like, where are you gonna make your money?
Yeah. It's kind of forcing people to go to other organisations, isn't it?
Yeah.
And which is a good thing, I think, as well, because more competition outside of the UFC. It's good to see Bellator coming up and other organisations over in like Asia as well are doing great as well, and attracting fighters that have fought at the UFC. Maybe have done the run and they're either they've done everything they want to do in the UFC, or they've been kind of cut from the UFC contract and go and doing it elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the celebrity boxing culture, I think it's interesting because like I saw a post where the card was YouTuber versus YouTuber sort of thing, and it was a whole card of it.
Oh, stop it! No.
No, it's like it's like YouTube rivalry fights basically. Like you said, it's a good thing. I'm thinking about it. Just a little bit of a thought in my head. Is it like CrossFit was for weightlifting? You know, a bit of a weird spectacle that people can get into, and then because weightlifters really credit Olympic lifting with, Olympic lifters credit CrossFit with having given a boost to people wanting to start weightlifting, and they're a bit of a resurgence of people getting into weightlifting. Could these stupid celebrity boxing matches be a bit of a resurgence to get people down into boxing?
See, they could, but I've not seen anything to suggest that just yet. Like, I've seen more people come to grappling clubs since McGregor, so there's definitely potential for it, but I've not seen anything. But then again, I'm not in that boxing world as much, so it's, do you really see it, or is it just kind of, is it going to be a little bit further down the road, this spike of injury?
It definitely seems like there's more people getting into MMA. I see the white collar boxing and these white collar MMA now as well.
Yeah.
You can do 8 to 12 weeks of training and then get in the cage against somebody else who's done the same amount.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see when or if any of these YouTubers start calling out MMA fighters in MMA. I don't think it's going
to happen. Like, you get AJ Egazan, he's constantly posting that video of him beating Jake Paul in an MMA match.
Of course it's going to happen though, as soon as you factor in grappling. I think I've seen Logan Paul do a bit of wrestling. He's got fairly decent wrestling from what I've seen. I think I want to say he was wrestling with Nicky Rod. Maybe, somebody fairly big dude. But he had okay wrestling. I think they've got a wrestling background from high school.
Yeah.
And that is the case a lot in America, isn't it? Like a lot of athletes or a lot of lads in America have done wrestling in high school, so they've got a background in grappling. But as soon as it'd be like going back to the early days of UFC, where if somebody knows some jiu-jitsu against somebody who doesn't know any jiu-jitsu, it's the end of the fight. It's Hickson by armbar.
Yeah.
All over again.
Oh, yeah.
Until they start to develop the skill set.
But then you give someone with a basic wrestling background some submissions and starts to even it out.
Which is like what we've been talking about with the high-level wrestlers starting to now learn some grappling at decent clubs.
And that's exciting to see, to be fair. But before we move on from the boxing, have you seen the other boxing headline with Anderson Silva and Tito Ortiz?
In a boxing match?
Yeah.
Did you watch Anderson Silva boxing? Very good, wasn't it?
Yeah, very, very good. So it's Tito, is it boxing Tito Ortiz, or is it, because when I read the article, I was under the impression it was MMA Tito Ortiz.
So, is it Anderson Silva's boxing versus Tito Ortiz's MMA?
Boxing.
When's that supposed to be happening?
September.
I
think it's either this month, yeah.
In Dubai? Is it on the Thor card? The one where he's supposed to be fighting Eddie Hall?
Possibly. I saw the headline, read the article a little bit, and it's pretty soon.
That wouldn't be surprising if that was the case, because they had to switch out of the main fight on that, didn't they, to that arm wrestling champion, who I can't remember the name of for the life of me now. But have you seen who he's training with?
No.
For Asabi of TriStar.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
So that should be interesting. See how much he can learn in the 5 weeks that he's got an opportunity to do some training.
Yeah.
Because he's an arm wrestler, he's got no striking background. It'd be amazing to see what they can do with him up there in 5 weeks.
I'm just picturing him now sort of coming out like this and then going.
Just throwing cat slaps. And then he knocks him out.
That would be impressive.
I think that'd be, I don't know whether it could even happen, but I think that'd be really, I don't want to say embarrassing, but I don't know, Thor would really have to reconsider his career in boxing if that happens.
Yeah.
I know it's an exhibition, but...
What is an exhibition? You can't play boxing.
It's like when you say, it's an interclub and it's 80% there's no such thing as 80% striking.
Kill or be killed.
Yeah.
You can't play strike. You can play grappling.
Yeah.
You can't play striking.
And that's why grappling's great.
Yeah.
You can carry on doing it until you're 80 with selected partners.
Yeah.
I love these, I'm definitely looking forward to doing it as well with over 40s grappling open mats. When I just become too old to get ripped apart by the 21-year-olds.
The thing is, where the warm-up's longer than the actual time.
Yeah.
Turn up 2 hours earlier, sort of get yourself warmed up. It's right, ready for one roll, let's go.
Have we got any actual grappling news? Jed Hugh got his black belt.
Yeah, Jed Hugh.
Frost Nickel.
Looks like it could be quite an interesting one in the black belt scene. Competitions seem to be up and running now in sort of full effect.
Yeah, it was Empire this weekend.
It was. Yeah, I think it was over in Leeds.
Yeah.
Say, do not envy anybody travelling over for that weekend, because it was the same weekend as Leeds Festival as well.
Of course it was. The whole of Manchester was busy this weekend. I was down in town and the football was on. Pride was on. People were travelling over to Leeds Fest as well, so it was pretty hectic. But it's that last bank holiday of the month where everyone's kind of just living, stretching out those last days of summer.
Oh, fully. I remember I had to get through town. Me and Nicole had a appointment through there, so it's driving through, and it took the best part of 45 minutes to get from one side to the other side.
Ridiculous, isn't it? Ridiculous. What else we got? Have we got actually any grappling news? I don't think there's anything to talk about, is there?
I say I watched that Craig Jones teaching clip. Interesting to see when that club's up in full force. Like, it's made me laugh where they had the 4 people running the club, and I think every one of them's injured.
Yeah, has he got a broken
hand?
Broken hand.
Nicky Ryan's broken knee. Pretty sure Krellenstein's got an injury. I think Nicky Rod was the only one that wasn't injured, but I don't think I remember seeing him hit.
I didn't see him on the video.
No.
So one of the guys from Flow Grappling was there as well, weren't they?
Yeah.
So interesting to see that they're kind of continuing to shine a light on Craig Jones's goings on and trying to keep boosting him. I don't know, I want to see that club do well, but more interesting, like we talked about last week, we won't go over it again too much, but how they can do continue to do on the competition scene.
And how they get on with coaching and building the team as well.
Yeah.
Because like Kieran seems to be doing really well with his, and he's sort of like fairly recent. So I wonder how smooth their transition from full-time athlete to full-time gym owner and coach, and how that's going to affect their competitive career.
Well, I think Keenan's admittedly said over the years that he's as much interested in leaving a legacy as a coach as he is in being a competitor.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the guys over there are in that same mindset or not, but Keenan's had that in his mind from what I've heard over the years about wanting to be a teacher first and foremost, and have that. He's got his Keenan online. He's got his club. What's it called? Legion BJJ.
Yeah.
AJJ.
American Jiu-Jitsu.
But yeah, I like him. He's a good teacher.
Yeah, really like him.
He's able to put across his points really well and effectively from what I've seen in videos. But how much does that come down to him, or like we talked about last week, the clubs that he's trained at in the past? That you pick up your teaching style from the people who coach you.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't like to see a lot of in jiu-jitsu like this is my thing, because it's actually a combination of everything, isn't it? It's not just like we talked about before, Brazilian jiu-jitsu or Brazilians getting upset about people calling it American jiu-jitsu or whatever, because it's a big mashup of everything, isn't it?
100%. That's why that American Jiu-Jitsu thing on Flow Grappling wound me up. It's like everyone's just complaining about how it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or how it's American Jiu-Jitsu. It's just grappling, sport grappling. Whether it's in the gi or no gi, you'd incorporate elements of wrestling, judo, sambo, jiu-jitsu, catch, all the different types of wrestling in there. Why are people so precious over what it's called?
I think for me, what's interesting about them calling it American Jiu-Jitsu, probably the truest American grappling art is wrestling.
Yeah.
And there's very little of that incorporated into Jiu-Jitsu just because of the nature of the sport. In terms of the way that wrestling's used on the ground,
Yeah.
Versus over in the UK, I think we've probably got more of an argument for if we wanted to be that way about it, say English Jiu-Jitsu, because of our wrestling history with catch wrestling.
Yeah.
And the way that actually is used on the ground. There's a lot more catch wrestling techniques that can be implemented in the ground game than there is from American wrestling or collegiate wrestling.
Just look at more in Americana, it's double wrist lock. The heel hooks were documented in catch wrestling in the early century. They had the ultimate choke defense. Farmer Burns just flaring his neck out. And from what I can gather, that was the reason why chokes aren't allowed in catch wrestling, because they felt they weren't effective.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
So you just crank your neck out?
There's an image where he's hanging by a noose, flaring his neck. Try it next time you're getting rear naked or
I
guillotine.
thought you were going to say try hanging yourself.
Well, no, not hanging.
Trying to tell me something.
Yeah, try flaring your neck when someone's trying to choke you and you buys you a bit more time.
Okay. I would have thought it would have just pushed the veins further out into the choke.
Now, because you got all the musculature around the front of it there, so it creates a bit of an extra barrier.
It's kind of like why it'd be really hard to choke out a cow, isn't it, or a horse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, from the rumour that I got told as a kid was if you punch a horse behind the ear, it's going to go down.
Right, so I've got 2 experiments to do this week.
So don't try to strangle a horse, you have to punch it behind the ear, apparently.
That's right. Maybe we can do an entire series on this. So,
on the
GRAPPLERS Academy YouTube.
Well, when Matt Hamill was on, I think it was Tough 3, and he was talking about his cow tipping and cow wrestling. And he was saying that he'd pin cows, and then like when they sleep and stand up, my brother told me about this as well, like cow tipping. So you run over and push it over.
Don't let
that was a weird
Peter here or the vegans that you talking about that. So what, vegans in jiu-jitsu that'll be coming after you?
Oh,
if we get cancelled because you're into cow tipping,
but luckily, because of the lack of meat and protein, there's no strength in them.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up.
Make sure you hit us up on all the socials. Give me all the scientific evidence of how vegan is better for building muscle.
Throwing shots.
Yeah, gorillas can eat leaves all day. They've got a different digestive system. Yeah, hit us up. Bonafide PT, coached by Si with the GRAPPLERS Academy across all platforms. Like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next week.
Just remember that it wasn't me who said the vegan thing.